Hi everyone, just having a look at Spa in the Pro Mazda, which is default and morning, week 12, sorry. Now you just want to get a clean exit out of this final corner. It doesn't have to be spectacular, just turn the car in and push it out, but make sure you're not correcting oversteer or getting the car sideways on exit. Now you're braking just out or slightly after this red bit in the fence there. You're down 3. Now you really don't want to overdo that braking point. If you go in there bombing the car in, trying to brake as late as you can, you miss the inside apex, which gives you a really bad run out of the corners. You have to kind of cut back. So you have to make sure you're getting the car into the apex. I'm trailing it a reasonable amount. I'm already on a fair amount of steering lock when the brake pressure is still decreasing. And I've caught the apex in second, and you're straight back on the throttle. Push it out. Don't want to go out too wide, no real reason to. Now up through a rouge, you just want to clip the inside apex. Nice and smooth. You don't want to be too wide in entry though, or it makes you kind of have to go out a bit and cut back, which adds more turning. You want to kind of attack it fairly straight on and just turn in. You haven't had to use much steering input, and you're certainly not lifting in this car. Smoothly through that. Now, as you come up onto this curb, you want to go down 2 gears. Braking, there's no real braking mark, but I'm braking kind of there on the curb, just slightly after it starts. Once again, trailing it in. I'm still on the brakes as you're turning in. A lot of these Spa corners, because they lead from fairly heavy braking zones into the corner entry, you're having to sort of turn in on the brakes to minimize the braking area, and they're really on the limit. This track has a really succinct limit to it, and if you go over it, you start to miss apexes and go into wide, and you lose a lot of time. So you've really just got to find where you can brake and get the apex, and if in doubt, brake a little bit earlier and get the apex. Don't brake late and miss the apex. That's when you really start to lose a lot of time. Now you've really got to open this next corner up. This is a fairly tricky little sequence. You've got to make sure you clip up this inside apex here, because that gives you a more straight line direction to the second one. Then you can turn it back over it. Now you've got both apexes here, but you're wanting to get the car left because you want to open up that next corner to take a wide entry so you don't understeer on the exit, because these cars have very minimal downforce on them, so they don't have much turning power compared to what you're fairly used to in the Pro Mazda. So you've really got to open the corners up to get online. Now, because you're starting to turn as second as you don't want to go too far up on this corner, but you can't really start to really turn in until you get off it, so the car's bouncing a little bit on it, you're trying to get back left. Now on this particular lap, I didn't quite open this corner up enough. I ideally would have liked to get a bit further left, so I've had to turn in a little bit narrow here, which is going to compromise my exit. So I've come in a little bit narrow, and I've just had to wait to get in the throttle a little bit, not quite pushed out. I believe I had 2 goes at it. Yeah, I've gone full throttle, then kind of realised this isn't going to stick and turn the corner properly, so I've had to come back out of it again and go back on it. There's a little bit of time lost there. It didn't get me quite perfect drive off the corner, but it was still fairly clean. So you want to go right, left, open this corner up, back over the inside curb. You need to set you fairly comfortable to bounce the car over those corners, because if you have it too loose, it starts to kick out, and you don't want that. So you're coming up on entry here. Again, there's no real braking point. Just kind of, I'm braking just after the curbing starts. Down the 3rd gear. Now it's very important to keep a tight line through this corner. You want to get it into the apex fairly early. Once again, trailing it in. See, most corners here are trailing. You're trailing it into the apex. And you want to keep the car fairly tightly tight to this inside corner here. Now what a lot of people do is they get impatient And I do it too sometimes, but you have to learn not to do it. You get impatient in the middle of the corner. You're just like, I want to get back on the throttle because this apex goes forever. But if you start to get back on the throttle earlier, all you're doing is increasing the track distance. If you find that you're running a line that goes more like this, where's an overhead shot? Instead of going out here, it's kind of pushing out here and having to then turn. Then you're just adding a lot of track distance. You want to kind of follow the apex around, then naturally shoot off. So get used to that corner going on for a long time. Okay, now in here you can either brake on this entry, you don't have to. Just kind of lift a little bit, throw it in. I didn't use the brakes at all, I don't believe. Oh, I did. I broke just a tiny little bit on entry just to settle it. In, hit the apex hard on the throttle, and don't use too much off track. If this was a car in a real life, you'd see the drivers just absolutely throwing it in gear and basically using all this to carry more momentum, but that's an off track in this game and it's important not to get in bad habits, so just practice keeping it on the track. If you start to throw it off there all the time, you're going to do it in the races and in qualifying, although there is a 10 to be had by doing it. So just somewhere around the middle of this curb is the braking point. Now you need to delicately turn it in. You're not using too much steering lock, you're just kind of just slowly turning the wheel and getting into the apex, and then you slam the throttle on hard. Once you hit the apex, it's full throttle time, you're pushing it right out to the outside of the track to carry maximum speed through these double apex corners, then you bring it straight back in. If you turn in too hard into the first apex, the car will sometimes wobble a little bit and then you'll have to catch it, and that really hurts your momentum. So you're just really gentle on initial turn in. Now this corner, you're braking somewhere around here. There's no real braking markers on this track that is extremely accurate, so you're kind of just always having to feel where you brake, and because you're having to trail the brakes in there every corner, if you're just a little bit too late, you start to lose a lot of lap time. So I'm braking it in, turning in before I'm off the brakes. Now you can get the front right wheel up onto this apex here, but I found that in practice I just wasn't doing it for whatever reason. It does tend to bump the car a little bit, which can push it offline. You definitely shorten the track by going up there, and you also open up the second apex. But I was just getting it on the white line on the side of that apex for whatever reason, rather than on the curb. Now then you want to turn straight back into this left-hander, and again, being patient here. If you go flat on the throttle, you're just going to push it off the track and get an off track, and the lap won't count. Using all of the curb on the outside, that's fine. Up to fifth. Now you're braking here about this point here and down one gear and throwing it in. Or maybe even a little bit earlier than that. Yeah. I'm on the brakes before the curb, so you're braking before that curb, down one gear, throwing it in. You just want to make sure you get that. You really do need to carry a lot of momentum into that first apex, because it's quite simple to sort of not carry enough speed into here, and it will keep the car settled and you can get it on a good exit, but you're just giving away a tenth if you don't really throw it into this apex. You have got to be careful though not to understeer out wide on exit, because again, this is one of the corners that the car wants to do it. But then you're back full throttle and you're good to go down this next section. Now I'm using this as my braking marker at the start of the curb, but I'm braking before it. You don't brake at it, you brake before it. Now what I like to do, just to not downshift too much on braking, brake hard, down 3 gears, Then you kind of into the corner, still harden the brakes, you're turning in as you're releasing the brake pressure, turning into the apex. You need to get that inside corner, and then you take the final downshift basically at the apex. So the wheel's kind of blocking the shift indicator, but you're downshifting. I'm going down 3 quickly, then just into second as I get near the apex. Now sort of keep the car out wide because you've got to cut back. You want to be in second gear through here. Don't go into first. If you turn it down to first, tends to lose traction on exit. Second's a decent amount of torque while still, not having to get that extra downshift. Hug the inside apex, then accelerate it out to the outside of the track. Then just run down to the line. That's the lap over. That was a 14.8, which I thought was a pretty good lap. Maybe not completely perfect, but there's a lot of track here, so to put together all the optimal sectors is quite difficult. And here's the lap in full speed.